Storm by Cheap Yellow Mustard from the CD Make Me One with Everything. Welcome to the Coon Report. May the peace and blessings of the life-giving creative spirit be upon you and upon your family. My name is Melvin Ishmael Johnson, coming at you live from Skidrow Studios. And I'm in the studio with my co-host, Miss Earlene Anthony. Now, this week on the Coon Round Report, we will talk about the Vortex in the community. And I'm delighted to have with us in the studios the founders of the Vortex Philanthropic Center for the Arts, Cameron Melville and Jeff Parker. Also in the studio with us tonight is Miss Mello.
Hey now.
One of the writers in our Veterans Theater Workshop at the Vortex. Let's start off talking about the Vortex. Earlene is going to read a little about the purpose of the Vortex.
The Philanthropic Center for the Arts, also known as the Vortex, is a privately funded venue. Its purpose is to facilitate and empower people who are working for positive social change at a grassroots level through providing a performing event space at low cost. Our purpose is to support individuals, groups, or organizations who seek to raise awareness on issues they think are important to a better community. We invite all participants to think of solutions in a long-term model of sustainability. How are we going to transform the way we think and live?
Okay. Let's start off with Cam, and then we'll talk to Jeff both. But can you tell our listening audience a little about your background and first, and then we get into the founding of the Vortex?
Yeah. Hi, Melvin. Earl. Hello. Thanks for having me on. My background, well, I grew up on the East Coast, and I grew up in an advantaged family financially. My mother and father were very active in the civil rights movement, worked a lot with the NAACP, also the ACLU. So I come from a history of activism in that way. I left home at a pretty early age, sort of hit the road when I was about 16, 17, and ended up having reestablishing my relationship with my folks, and we had a great relationship into their later life. They're both gone now. My father founded an organization called the Melville Charitable Trust, which is dedicated to eradicating homelessness in Connecticut. So later in my life, I came into some money rather unexpectedly, and Jeff and I put our heads together and talked about what we might want to do, and that turned into what's called Vortex now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. How about you, Jeff?
A little history on
yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm East Coast too. Cameron obviously is my cousin, and his mom is my dad's sister, so that's the connection there. And you know, I've always been real close with my relatives back east, and experienced a lot of connection with his family, and I was aware of what they've been doing all along. And Cameron was a musician, and especially in my teenage years, I looked up a lot to him in that respect, although I never really explored that at that age. And yeah, I don't know. I just we spent a lot of time together, and kind of followed him out here to California when he lived in San Francisco. He's got another brother who lives down here in Los Angeles, and I chose Los Angeles. But yeah, that's we were both, and he kind of migrated down from the north to Tehachapi, which is Kern County, and so we were even closer then, and just spent more and more time together, I think, as we got older.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about your music in a little while. But how did you get off into music? You started early, right?
Yeah, I started real early teaching myself how to play piano. It was pretty much of a solo pursuit for most of my childhood. And when I was a teenager, I started to learn some tricks from some other players, and then I started to find like-minded people who wanted to put bands together, work on original music. So I had a series of bands starting when I was about 19. Mm-hmm. The band Cheap Yellow Mustard, which one of my favorites, was a project we did up in Tehachapi, California. And we all had day jobs at the time, and we loved recording and loved writing. Jerry Milkins is the guitarist and the main composer of the band, and he would put out a skeleton of a piece, with the exception of Bass Storm, actually, which we listened to. That was written by Tommy Smith, our bass player. Mm-hmm. But it was very much a collaborative effort, and we would go into the recording studio and have a ball. And we have two albums. One's called Cheap Yellow Mustard, and the second one is Make Me One With Everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I can find that other one, too.
I'll find it for you, Mother.
Okay. Look, let's play a 2-minute clip from an event that you had in March at the Vortex, and then we'll come back and discuss the Vortex.
We decided to try to build someplace that would have the ability to support people's art and organizations towards a betterment of society. So we seek out people, and people seek us out, who are looking to do consciousness-raising and fundraising events. And if they fit the criteria, you go through our website, which is an adventure. It was an adventure putting it together. It's a number of years to learn the ins and outs of, I see some people laughing. It was arduous, to put it lightly. Jeff bore most of the brunt of the bureaucratic and physical challenges involved in getting this place up and legal for 400 people to do what they will do here. So I wanted to welcome you. The vision of our place, as I said, is as a support network for people to expand what they are doing, their events. And please visit our website, which is vortexla.org. And think outside the box. I encourage everyone to think outside the box. Work from your event and go backwards. Visualize it. I was just thinking that Jeff and I basically visualized this about 10 years ago. And here we are. So there'll be a few people getting up and speaking, people who've used the space for different projects. And please enjoy. I know I'm leaving something out. I'll probably jump up and maybe speak a little again later. But welcome, everybody. Enjoy yourselves. Let's party.
Get me some more of that. Yeah, looking forward to another one of those events coming up.
We are too.
Now, what do you mean by outside the box when you mention that?
Well, I think what I was talking about, the concept that Jeff and I came up with originally was, again, to build something which could facilitate many different kinds of events or many different kinds of causes. Using a space to help them in, what I mean, I guess, by outside of the box is think a little unconventionally. What I meant was that we are offering a space. We've done a lot of work to make it available to people, and to take that concept and start there and think outside of perhaps just conventional event planning. Think about the mission, and therefore think outside the box. Mm-hmm.
And now, how did the name come about? Was that the original name when you first started?
No, sir. No. I tend to talk a lot and use a lot of words, and I believe I came up with the Alchemist Properties Philanthropic Center for the Arts. I think that was probably a co.
It's a tongue twister.
Yeah, it's a lot of words. It doesn't, I liked it. Anyway, our friend Geza, who is part of this project, Geza was looking at a map, and he was looking at where we were opening, and to his mind, he felt it was a vortex of L.A., the 5 and the 10 intersection particularly, and what was happening downtown with the artist scene coming up and the warehouse scene coming up. He visualized it as a vortex of creativity, so that sort of stuck, the vortex.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's beautiful. Gazer. So now what's the process for doing an event at the Vortex?
The process is to go to the website, which is vortexla.org, and read our criteria, what it is we're doing, and the kind of event that we are looking to support, the rules, the regulations and stuff. And assuming that your event fits our description, our criteria, you go on to the application process. Mm-hmm. And there's a simple online application which you submit, and then we reply, and we take it from there.
Mm-hmm. What do you think have been the biggest challenge in putting it together over there in that area?
You mean once we were up and running, or beforehand?
Both of them.
Beforehand, it was definitely the red tape. I mean, it was just ridiculous. The city of Los Angeles is just this maze of bureaucracy that was pretty difficult to navigate. And I don't, quite honestly, don't really think that they had a lot of faith that we were going to do what we said we were going to do, which was to just put a community center together. I think they kind of might have more suspected like we were trying to put together an underground club of some sort, and weren't entirely interested in doing that, although there have been some parties there. I won't say that hasn't happened, but ultimately we just want to follow all the rules and regulations and kind of work with the city instead of be underground. I mean, it's cool that it looks like an underground space, but we don't want to be underground, and so I think developing relationships with the police department has been probably one of the biggest challenges in gaining their trust and faith in what it is that we want to do over there. And quite honestly, I mean, I would like to see a lot more of the kind of stuff that you do over there, which is more of program-oriented things rather than event-oriented things. Although events are great, it just seems that unfortunately, people are not capable of thinking outside of the box, and the main thing people want to do to raise money is sell alcohol. And so I think there's got to be other ways to raise money. And
that's not what we meant by raising consciousness.
Yeah. So
now you also worked on a facility in New Orleans. Also, can you tell us a little about that?
Well, that was even stranger in inception than this one, because we just went down there on a destination weekend with Cameron's son, Cameron, and I, and some other folks, and got connected with a friend of Cameron's who had been down there for a number of years, who had started a community center down there. He started working, I think, just on a soup line kind of thing.
Right after Katrina.
Right after Katrina, and never left, and opened up a community center. And he really didn't have any place to live. He was still living in one of the very last FEMA trailers. He was living in pretty squalor conditions. And we're like, and so, we were talking about like maybe, and it's funny because Cameron and I both thought of this separately. We didn't even really have a discussion, but it's like, well, what's the point of giving any money to his community center? Because he's obviously not going to spend it on himself. And what really, he's one of the most important assets there. Mm-hmm. So how can we raise the quality of his living to give him the juice, the emotional juice that he needs to persevere with his project that he had going on? So we thought about finding a better place for him to live. And that's what spun into this. We ended up with a space that has an old store and some apartments upstairs. And what we're going to do is have a meeting space down there and an artist in residence program for people that are from outside of New Orleans, because New Orleans is a very special place culturally, and it's like no other place and I think more people probably could stand to experience that. And it's got a tremendous, rich art scene down there, and music, art,
jazz.
Jazz, blues, but lots of other things as well. And so anyway,
it's up and running now.
No, we're still.
Not quite.
Yeah, we're close.
Close. It's been much more expeditious than the Vortex was.
Is it larger than the Vortex?
Oh, no.
Be small, much smaller.
Yeah, the space itself is like a fraction. It's probably 1,500 square feet, where the Vortex is about 6,500 square feet, the meeting space. But then there's the artist in residence, which are 3 apartments that are upstairs that artists we're thinking could come from anywhere in the country and experience New Orleans, visit us, there.
Have you come up with a name yet for it? Not yet.
Still working on that.
How about the Vortex 2?
The Vortex sequel.
Now that's thinking outside the box.
Now, you also do a lot of veteran related events at the Vortex. Military Stand Down. The third one is coming up Saturday, November the 15th, 2014. You work closely with the Veterans Project over there with Jeff Norman and our Veterans Theater Workshop also. So, Jeff, I'd like to talk about a few veterans issue. We had a discussion. You brought up a term. I had vaguely heard of it. I've looked into it a little closely now. You call it transferred PTSD. Can you talk about that a little and how it impact your life?
Well, yeah. That's a lot there. My dad was a World War II veteran and combat Marine in the South Pacific, and saw some pretty severe things, experiences, which he brought home with him emotionally. And so, yeah, he had trauma due to his experience. And I think during Vietnam, they started to give some credibility to the idea of that veterans could transfer this onto their family and loved ones by their close relationship with them. And I had a lot of the symptoms that he had, which was quick to react, a lot of anxiety, fear, temper, and I guess most of my life I just thought that was learned behavior, but I had a real difficult time escaping it. I couldn't relearn my behavior. I went to a tremendous amount of, my dad didn't have any therapy. I went to a tremendous amount of therapy, of all different kinds of therapy. And after my dad passed away, somebody mentioned that to me, and it just, everything all of a sudden just made sense to me, what was going on.
Yeah, because I got a lot of military in my background, too. I'm a veteran in the Marines, and out of 7 brothers, 6 of us served in the military. 6 of us are veterans, 3 in the Army, 2 in the Air Force, and I was in the Marines. And I think about that with my oldest brother, who was one of the first one to go to Vietnam, and I can really relate to how that impact the rest of the families. And especially, it's a little bit better now because, like you said, they didn't have a name for it during that time. Yes, very. Can you talk about some of the symptoms of it, of transferred PTSD?
Well, I think they're probably very similar to PTSD, except the hardest thing about having transferred PTSD is, my dad had, I'm going to use the word real trauma. Like, he had a real experience. He was over there. And so, so to put it in an analogy, he had like a broken arm and I had a stubbed toe. So I couldn't really look at my trauma if he wasn't willing to look at his trauma. And so that's why it was probably best that I discovered it after he passed away, because then I could really take a look at it. But it's just like a tremendous amount of fear that strikes into my or actually I've had treatment for it, EMDR, which you may have heard of or not, but it's one of the treatments for trauma. But like a tremendous amount of fear that'll come crashing down on me. Time seems to kind of disappear, and all of a sudden I'm stuck in forever. So I'm in fear forever, fight or flight, and for me, it was fight. Mm-hmm. My dad, too, was a Marine. So I felt like I grew up in the Marine Corps. It was a lot of like shouting and haba haba and fire in the hole and all that stuff from the time I can remember.
And where did you fit in the birth order of the family? Were you the oldest?
I was the youngest. There was just two of us, and my sister passed away when I was a teenager. So I was really the only one in the house for part of my...
Okay. Cam, you want to say anything about that?
Do I want to say anything about that? Well, I certainly knew my Uncle Mike, and Jeff and I have talked a lot about the horror that he went through, and it was, combat, and it's just, it's no surprise to me, when I became familiar with the concept of PTSD being passed on, I never really thought about it, but once I started thinking about it, it made a great deal of sense. The idea that you can actually pass along trauma through your behavior, and kids they just receive. And, that's all I got to say on that.
Okay. Now, Cam, you also have a CD, Chief Yellow Mustard, and I'd like to play a 2-minute clip from the CD, Make Me One with Everything. The song is entitled Beautiful Woman.
Yes, sir.
All right. That's a beautiful song. That's you on keyboards, right?
That's me on keyboards, indeed. And my friend Jerry Milkins on lead guitar. He wrote that.
Now, Milkins, he used to play with, he was a known musician playing with, wasn't he in a band once around that Memphis area? It seemed like I remember that name from somewhere playing.
I don't believe that Jerry Milkins. Yeah. Maybe another one.
And then I saw Tom Scott on there.
Tom Scott, yeah. He, of course, that's a very funny story. Jerry and I were sitting in the car once listening to our rhythm tracks, and when we were in the studio, and I said, man, wouldn't it be cool to have saxophone on there? And he's like, yeah. And I said, man, can you imagine having Tom Scott? And he goes, oh, I know Tom Scott. And I said, really? He goes, yeah, I tiled his kitchen 2 years ago. And I said, oh, he lives near here. So we drove up to Tom's house and knocked on the door, and he came down and recorded with us, did 3 tunes. Thrill. Tom Scott was,
Awesome.
he did all the horn arrangement for Joni Mitchell and Steely Dan, and played with George Harrison. Great player.
Yeah, great musician. Now, how did this particular CD come about? Putting it together.
This is our second effort. The first one was pretty much of a homemade affair. You can record a lot easier these days than not too long ago. We went into a recording studio for both of them. The first one, we knew what we were doing. We went in and laid everything down. The second one, we sort of wrote in the studio. It just matured in the studio. The first one is just called Cheap Yellow Mustard. The second one is Make Me One With Everything.
Now, Earlene I know she got a question she wants to ask.
I want to know how you came up with the name Cheap Yellow Mustard. Because when I think of the cheap yellow mustard, back in the day you had the hot dogs, and that was about the only mustard you had, and it really tasted good.
That's right.
How did you come up with that name?
Well, Jerry, the first piece that when I met Jerry, I moved down to Tehachapi, and Jerry lived there for a while. And the first piece we played of his was an original that he had called Cheap Yellow Mustard. As far as how, I don't remember exactly how that came about, but anyway, we started playing together, and next thing we had a trio, and then a quartet, and then a 5-piece, and then a 6-piece, and there's lots of bands can waste an amazing amount of time sitting around trying to come up with the right name. So I said, let's just keep it simple. We got one thing here, Cheap Yellow Mustard. Let's just go with that. And everyone agreed, and that was it. The decision was made, and we never looked back.
That's awesome.
Do you find a difference in the music? Because we're going to talk about in a little while your nightclub back in New York. But I know you spent some time up north in San Francisco. Do you find a difference in the music and the musicians in these 3 particular areas?
Oh, hugely. That's quite a question. A lot of the music I did in Northern California was rock and roll based. There's a different musical attitude I found between Northern California and Southern California in terms of commercial music. I think the Cheap Yellow Mustard has more of a commercial appeal than a lot of the stuff I did in Northern California. We did a lot of freaky rock and roll and improv stuff, and it was a lot of fun, but it wasn't commercially viable. That was my experience. Not to say that music out of Northern California isn't commercially viable, but that was my personal experience. The music we're doing, there's back east, New York State, and upstate New York has an amazing tradition in rock and roll and folk rock going back to Woodstock, and I don't mean the festival, I mean the town where the band lived and where Bob Dylan lived in the mid-'60s. There's a huge tradition. There's an amazing rock and roll sound, and it's alive and well in New York State. There's a lot of young bands, and they're not emulating the band, but they have this high-energy American rock and roll sound. They're really carrying on a tradition. So we feature artists like that as much as we can at the club in Hudson, New York.
We'll come back and talk about your club in details in a moment. I'll tell you what, let's take a break for our community calendar, and then we'll come back and talk about the club in New York, a few other things.
Great.
Right.
This is the community calendar for upcoming events. Drama Stage Qumran Veterans Community Workshop is being held every Wednesday from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. for a 10-week session consisting of creative writing, which deals with working on scripts and getting them ready for production, anti-violent situation coping groups, dealing with veterans' trauma, young people dealing with bullying and other violence, and basic elements of stage management. The participants are currently working on original 10 to 15-minute stage plays that focus on veterans affairs. Also, the log line for the script. This tells what the script is about in 1 or 2 sentences. Also, to help you verbally pitch your script and help you focus your script. The goals for these playwrights will be On or before the final session, the original plays will be ready for a stage reading with professional actors at the Vortex or the NoHo Theater in Hollywood. The location of the workshop is the Vortex, 2341 East Olympic Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90211. This is at the corner of Santa Fe and Olympic Boulevard. The Metro bus number 60 and 66 stops right at the corner. For more information, you can contact Drama Stage 1 at yahoo.com or 213-479-1764. If you have a community event that you would like announced on our show, send the information to Drama Stage 1 at yahoo.com. Attention, Early and Anthony. And the call-in number for the show is 800-893-9562. Now, back to our hosts.
Okay, thank you, Miss Earlene Anthony. We're back in the studio with our in-studio guests, Cameron Melville, Jeff Parker, Miss Mello over there. And Miss Mello, let's get a few comments from, but first, before we get a few comments from you, do you have any questions for Jeff and Cameron?
Well, being the East Coast baby myself, I was born in Boston, so there's a lot of cultural differences and similarities that they have in LA. But I really do applaud you for looking into the need of what the community is suffering, lack of resources or places that artists can come and, like you said, think outside the box. And Los Angeles, you would think, would be the number one place to supply this, but in essence, it's actually the opposite. So I definitely wanted to find out, what do you see, or where do you see the Vortex in the next 2 years or a year and a half or so? Like, what is your prospect plans to have the Vortex do for LA?
Just to get the word out and to have the right people appreciate and recognize the opportunity that we're affording to them. I mean, like Jeff said, we're looking to facilitate daytime programs, evening programs. As far as what I see in a couple of years, I see a full calendar. And, you know, one of the concepts that Jeff and I talked about originally was what we called watering across the grassroots. You know, if you believe that real change has to come from the grassroots, the part of the concept was, well, let's make something that can be used to water all the way across the grassroots. Instead of putting all our attention on one particular cause, let's build something that those causes can use to improve themselves and improve their financial situation. So what I would like to see, what we would like to see, would be a wide variety of programs that address lots of different issues, and people taking the ball and running with it and doing their best with what we're offering.
That's awesome. Well, I do thank you again, and we need more people like you to really be inspiring and help others. It's just such a need for artists to have a space to call their own on a regular basis, because everything is expensive, or if they don't have the funding, it's a maze. But I do thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you.
So, what are the possibility of having more young people programs over there, or tying it into the school system or something like that?
Well, I don't know, but tying to the school system, we've touched on a couple of ideas that those have not borne fruit yet. It's a perfect venue for young people's programs, any kind of programs. As I said, we've done some outreach to the community, and we're going to continue to do that, targeted to nonprofits and social justice people, trying to let people know what it is we're doing, and that we're actually. It's funny when Jeff was saying that the city, we had perhaps naively, we sort of thought that the city might help us with the concept of building a community center. Since it was a cool thing to do. We learned early on that actually the city was just somewhat. They just didn't get it. They kept looking for the hook, like, what really? And I think so. It was difficult in that way to get people to really embrace our message and the fact that we're not looking to make a fast buck on anybody.
We did get a little love though from the council district, both when Villa Ricosa and with Weezar They did help
That's
push
true.
us through in the tight moments, so we weren't totally abandoned.
That's true. That's true. Good to mention that.
And then you right now you got Brad Philman that's on the neighborhood council, and you had Gazer that was on the neighborhood council for a while. Let's talk about Gazer. Can you talk a little about Gazer X and the Vortex studio over there? Because Gazer is quite a personality.
He is quite a personality, and I hope you're listening, Gazer, so you can hear me say that. What can I say about Gazer? Gazer got in on our conversation with in the visionary stages before I don't know if we'd even acquired the building at that point. I think it was.
I don't believe so.
It was before we acquired the building, and we were. It was the kind of thing sitting around and dreaming about what could be done, what we might like to do, and Gazer was a very active participant in that conversation. And Gazer is a producer and recording engineer. Who's worked a long time in the industry. He's a political thinker and a social thinker, and he recommended a book to me called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, which that book I think helped me visualize the importance of what we were doing, because we're not targeting a big issue. We're making ourselves available for many issues to be worked on, and that was something that Gazer spoke about with a lot of enthusiasm. Where arts and community space could cause small changes that would, in effect, cause big changes.
And I don't want to take too much from the show tomorrow night, but how did you meet? Just talk a little about Jeff Norman. He's a very interesting personality also.
He is a very interesting personality, yes, indeed. How did I meet Jeff Norman? That was rather interesting. I went to a lecture. This was under what I called the dark days of W. And it was a lecture about U.S. military action in Iraq and the threat at that time of additional U.S. military action in Iran, which we really didn't know there for a while what W was going to do or not do. Anyway, I went to a lecture in Hudson, New York, by a gentleman named Scott Ritter, who Scott Ritter was he was the
UN inspector, right?
Correct. He was the UN weapons inspector who ran the inspections in Iraq, and before that he was a U.S. weapons inspector in Russia. And he was a conservative Republican military man, not circle I hang out in too much. But he, right before W invaded, he stood up and said, I know conclusively that there are no weapons in Iraq. And he was immediately, unceremoniously booted from his position, and he was discredited. And anyway, he went on to start speaking about military matters, and I felt that was a very important message at that time. I was quite inspired after hearing him speak. So I got on the phone and to try to find out what I could do to facilitate Scott's message, and the guy who answered the phone was Jeff Norman. And we ended up having quite a few adventures out on the road, social activism adventures. We went out with Scott Ritter, and he spoke about military and social issues, and myself and my friends Lizzie and Baba supplied the music for the evening. It was quite interesting.
Now, what was in the spot where the Vortex is at? What was there before?
I believe it was a clothing distribution, right? It was a clothing distribution warehouse. It was just a huge warehouse with loading bays when we got it.
Okay. Let's talk about your club in New York. How did that come about? What's the name of where is it located?
It's called Club Helsinki Hudson, and it's located in Hudson, New York, which is about 100 miles north of Manhattan. And how did it get started? Well, there was a Club Helsinki in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, which was a very small club with a very fine reputation, but it only seated about 70 people. And My now partners, Mark Schaffler and Deb McDowell, were the owners of that. They had a commitment to good music and social action also. They had Odetta back at that club, Doc Watson, Pete Seeger, Arlo Guthrie, and we got together and started to think about building a place, a bigger, better place. And we ended up spending 6 years building it, and we've been open for 4 years. It's got a nightclub and a restaurant and a ballroom. It's really quite something. The website is HelsinkiHudson.com.
Now back to Gazer. Before we get away from Gazer, have you ever considered doing a CD or have you played with Gazer before?
I have played with Gazer, sure, definitely. And I would have to say I haven't really, because of my focus, I haven't really been that focused on recording and composing and playing the last few years. Jeff, on the other hand, might have a different answer on that.
Yeah, that's how I met Gazer. He was a music producer. So one of the bands I was with recorded with him, and then we had another band that recorded with him, and then I did some stuff, co-wrote some stuff with Gazer.
So Jeff, you play? You a musician too?
I do not play. I sing, singer-songwriter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, beautiful. Let's go over here with Bobby. And Bobby, you have a couple questions. I know you had a chance to work with Gazer over there also. But do you have a couple questions or comments about Gazer, or for Jeff or Cam?
Yes, I go say, can y'all play at our fundraiser? We're looking for more entertainment.
Play at the what now?
At the fundraiser.
Which fundraiser you referring to?
At the Vortex, October 11th.
October 11th.
Yeah. Are y'all free?
I think I will be on the East Coast, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't currently have a band, so I'm just...
But we find a band, you just sing, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you need a singer for a band, I'll step in there.
Okay, we're going to talk afterwards.
All right.
I'm going to hook you up. Yeah. So,
now, what's your relationship with Gazer? How did you work with him?
I think I met him through you. Yeah. And then, for me, I'm starting my own social network, which is an entertainment social network, music entertainment to bait people in to see entrepreneurship and self-employment. And then I was working with Melvin, and I met Gazer, and we got to talking, so we got to collaborating. He told me about his history. And then with me working with a lot of people in the community, so I want to bring everybody together so we can maybe do like a little compilation or something. Get people interested, and also start promoting with y'all at the Vortex and let people know what y'all have going.
Now, can you also tell us about the feeding program that you guys work with Jeff Norman on at Gladys Park? You do a couple of events down there.
I think we just worked with him with the called the Vet Hunter. I think they did something this past Sunday, I think. And we're going to be working with them some more after this fundraiser we do. After the stand down, me and Jeff are talking about working some more projects together.
Cool. I just wanted to mention something we didn't touch on is that, and part of Gazer's function is we have there's a studio built there which is for recording and video and audio recording, and Gazer is helpful in finding ways to interface that with the projects that come into the Vortex, such as some of the veterans projects. There's been some teaching programs for hands-on recording and production. Also, the idea of making tutorial videos or videos for nonprofits at an affordable price.
Yeah, because we're trying to develop some projects with Gazer. Well, we got a couple possible funds coming in through there.
Good.
About that. And we're really looking forward to talking to you about that James Baldwin project.
Yeah, man.
Got some great ideas for that. I know Judy is...
she excited about that?
She's excited with
I thought she might be.
Like a little kid.
And I am also. I think that's
me too. Very exciting.
Great projects. Let's go around for some closing comments and contact information. Let's start over here with Miss Mello. Tell us about some of the projects you're working on.
Well, we have several things coming up. September 30th, we're having a rally at City Hall to expose the findings of mission mishandlings and a lot of client abuse. And October 11th, we have a casting at the Los Angeles Convention Center from 10 a.m. to 5, where we'll be auditioning all sorts of talents, people with no background whatsoever to come out for Broadway shows that we are debuting next year, 2015 and 16. And those who make it, actually, hopefully we can join you guys at the fundraiser at the Vortex. The finalists will do their pieces there. So it's those 2 days, September 30th, City Hall, and October 11th, Los Angeles Convention Center is the casting for Broadway shows for the Year of the Diamond. I have a nonprofit called the Kingdom Warriors Foundation, and our main purpose is to rehabilitate through performing arts. So that's our gig. My name is Mellow Desire, and you can email me at theyearofthediamond@gmail.org, or you can Facebook us, The Year of the Diamond or Kingdom Warriors Foundation.
Mm-hmm. And what are you working on in the Veterans Writers Workshop?
Oh, actually, I'm very excited for this class. Starting one of the plays that we have is called Get on the Bus, and it's about 11 women, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Susan B. Anthony, a lot of historical figures just telling their story on this unforgettable bus ride. And it's really geared towards a lot of the youths who don't know their history, and the adults as well, so they can get a snippet of what a lot of the rights, a lot of the movements that we went through from slavery to civil rights, of how these women were able to open the doors for how we live today. And that's the basis for the other 6 plays as well. But this particular play I'm working on with Melvin at the veterans class, and it's such a wonderful eye-opener. He just gave me a couple of characters to add on, which I'm going to be diligently working on in the next few days. But I really believe after this class, have a piece of art that is going to be phenomenal and that needs to be told, because a lot of the schools are not teaching our kids the history of what a lot of these people went through. You know, you have the same Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, but there's tons of other activists that changed the way we live today, and that's really what we're targeting and trying to bring that in a visually stunning performance, combining dance, music, film and television, and live theater.
Mm-hmm. Let me throw this out, because, you know, as I get older, I just like to have your comments on what you think is, how can we make things better to avoid like a situation we got in Ferguson, Missouri now. You know, reminds me of a lot of stuff that jumped off in the 60s. It seemed like we're going in circles and all that kind of stuff. So, anybody want to comment on that?
I certainly don't have the answer. I mean, I believe it comes down to raising of consciousness. And I know that's a overused term these days, but and education and history, knowing history. I mean, I don't know. And the militarization of the police is absolutely horrifying. I mean, you know, I don't think that's the core problem. I think the problem is much older than that, but it's certainly exacerbated when you have people running around with machine guns. It's horrific. It's very distressing, obviously, to see what's going on in Ferguson. It's just,
I guess the biggest surprise I got is I think I thought that something like that have always jumped off in the big cities like L.A., New York, you know, Harlem or something like that, Detroit, Chicago. I had never even heard of Ferguson to be, you know, of course I've heard of St. Louis and all that.
St. Louis is a pretty rough town.
Bobby, what are your thoughts on it?
I just I don't know, it seemed like things are just getting worse, and people are not, lack of unity of coming together, and I almost don't know what to say.
We're living in the end of days.
I was gonna say it's like prophecy almost, and nothing you can do. Well, you got to keep trying to do something. Though.
Well, see, prophecy, that's nice, but I like to get down to the real terms, you know, like I think people need jobs. You know, that's a look for our young people and stuff like that.
I was going to say that, but still, they're doing what they're doing. I mean, that just creates more depression or just more anxiety on people. Like with me, I want to do entrepreneurship and help people. My main thing is economics, help people make money and change their mind frame and things like that. But if you got other stuff like that going on, it kind of makes it hard.
Yeah, I think it's about creating opportunity. That's what it is. It's not only just getting a job like 9 to 5 and be miserable. Just creating something that hasn't been there. There's so many outlets that these kids and these adults as well can create to make entrepreneurship for others. And that's how we just have to band together. We just literally have to work together because money is not an issue. It's about bartering. It's about how we can build something. And then, money comes after. But of course you need money. But at the same time, it's really about what I can use as a resource, what talent I can bring in to build something. And that's the key to really creating a future.
Togetherness.
I just want to put my little thing in here. I really think a lot of town hall meetings would really help. Having these angry people out there that's protesting in the street come together and sit down and talk about these things because it's like a boiling point. Every time something of this magnitude happens, we see the same thing repeating itself.
Yes.
And people have not really talked about how they really feel because there's a lot of angry people out there in these cities. A lot of prejudice that are going on. But if they could come together and just sit down and just air it out, get it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And deal with it.
Okay, then. We winding down. Let me give Cam and Jeff the closing comments here.
I just dovetail what you were saying about sitting down and talking. I mean, there's also just sitting down. And it worked for Gandhi and it works in India. And, I mean, there is... when you look at the powers that are arrayed against progress, whether it's the Koch brothers or Fox News or whatever, there still is the power of the people in this country. If people just sat down and stopped and turned off their televisions, I mean, it's
That's right.
it sounds like a radical concept, but it's not really. I mean, that's. But that comes with, there has to be some unity there. Obviously, there has to be leadership, and that's what I think we're really lacking right now is leadership. But I tend to be an optimist. I don't know what the bright side of Ferguson is, but
I would say just beyond thinking outside of the box. More importantly, is stepping outside of your box and putting your hand out and. Being colorblind and love is a word that I toss around a lot these days because, love and forgiveness are like the things that when you ask me about my PTSD, that's the kind of stuff that I have to fall back onto. I do a lot of reading and spiritual stuff about love and forgiveness, and it removes resentment and anger.
Yes.
And just forcing myself, even if I don't want to be social is what I got to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to extend a special thanks to my special guests, Cameron Melville, Jeff Parker, over here with Miss Mella, Bobby Buck in the studio, my co-host, Earlene Anthony. Please listen to past shows of the Qumran Report by Googling in Qumran Report. Thank you for tuning in to the Qumran Report, and from your host, Melvin Ishmael Johnson, may the peace and blessings of the life-giving creative spirit be upon you and upon your family. I leave you with a song that opened the show, Bay Storm by Chief Yellow Mustard from the CD Make Me One with Everything.
Thank you, Melvin.